Welcome to Contemporary Mathematics, Math 1020. My name is Carol DeFries and I'll be your instructor this semester. The purpose of this video is to give you some information about how the course is run and to also give you some information about some things that you need to do before we have our first class meeting. If you haven't found the syllabus yet, look on My Gateway and click on the Syllabus tab for our course. Read through the syllabus very carefully. There's a lot of information there. If you have any questions on anything in the syllabus, please be sure to ask on our first class meeting. We'll also be using Canvas, which is the university's new learning management system, but we're using it to a very limited extent. Almost everything that you need is going to be on My Gateway. You also will need a basic calculator for this course. Now, chances are you have a calculator, but it may not be one that's allowed for this class. This is a calculator that's called a scientific calculator. It has keys on it for trigonometry, things like sine and cosine. And this is a graphing calculator. It can make graphs of functions. Neither of those are considered basic calculators. So if that's what your calculator looks like, you won't be able to use it on tests for this class. A basic calculator is exactly that. It does 4 functions. It can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and it also has a square root key. Here's an example of a basic calculator that's approved for this class. Now, it's not the only calculator you could possibly use. You may well have a calculator at home that's a simple 4-function calculator. And if you already do and it works, by all means, go ahead and use it. But if you don't have a 4-function calculator and you're concerned about what kind you can use, this one is certainly available for you to buy in the bookstore. If you wonder whether the calculator you have is going to be one that you can use on the tests, make sure that you show it to me in class and I'll let you know. Now, your grade for this course is determined by homework, quizzes, tests, and the final exam. Homework and quizzes are done through Connect Math, which is an online platform. Homework is entirely through Connect Math, and half of your quizzes are through Connect Math. The other half of your quizzes will be done in class. When you register for the class, you are automatically billed for Connect Math. Connect Math is required for this course because that's how you're going to be doing your homework and half of your quizzes. But it's also where you'll find your electronic textbook and lots of other resources for the course. If you'd like a paper copy of the textbook, you can buy that through the bookstore, but the paper copy is optional. So, to get started with Connect Math, it's very easy. Go to connectmath.com, click on the Sign Up link, enter your course code, and then fill in the rest of the information. The course code will also be found in the course syllabus, and the course code is also on My Gateway. Now, once you sign up for Connect Math, you're going to see that there's assignments that you can already do. And some of those assignments will already earn you some extra credit for the class. You'll find an explanation of the extra credit on My Gateway. You're going to find yourself doing a lot of work before our class periods because this class is run as a flipped classroom. You're probably used to a traditional classroom where the teacher instructs you in the class and then you go home and you practice homework. Well, in a flipped classroom, you get that initial instruction outside of class, and then when you come to class, you get a chance to practice those concepts and get a deeper and better understanding of them. So if this is what you thought our classroom would look like, it's actually going to look a lot more like this. When you come to class, you will have already watched a video to learn something about the new concepts. And then when you come to class, you get a chance to work with a group to practice those concepts. Now, in general, for each of the concepts we're learning, for each of the sections we're covering, we'll spend some time going over the material at the beginning of class. Then you'll get a chance to work with a group. And then we'll go over that material that you worked with your group. And then you'll have a quiz over that material. So far, I've taught 6 different courses at UMSL through a flipped classroom style. And students seem to really enjoy this type of learning. But I've also asked students what really makes flipped learning successful for them. So I'd like to share with you some of the things that my students have said would be good to pass along to anybody who's going to take a flipped course. First of all, they've told me, always take notes when you watch videos and bring your notes to class. When you're watching that video at home, that's really taking the place of a traditional lecture. So you have to treat that video as if it's a lecture and take notes exactly like you would if you were sitting in a classroom and listening to an instructor lecture. They've also said, don't come to class unprepared, because if you come to class unprepared, you're going to feel lost and your group's going to feel a little let down because you're working with your group, and if you can't contribute, they're not going to feel like you're really supporting the group. Now, one last thing to talk about, simply because this is a summer class, and that is that in a summer class, we're covering exactly the same amount of material as we would in a regular semester class. So, in essence, our race is just as long. But we've got half the time to do it, which means to get to that end of the race, to get to August, we have to move twice as fast as we would during a regular semester. Now, that can be a little bit challenging. So make sure that you follow along with the schedule as we go along. That schedule is in your syllabus, and when you look on Connect Math, you'll also see a calendar that will outline the due dates for everything that we're doing in the course. Pay close attention to those due dates, because if you miss a due date, it's going to cost you points in this course. So what do you need to do before our first class period? Before I ever see you face to face? We'll take a look at the schedule, either in your syllabus or on Connect Math, and you will see there are 2 sections that we're covering on our first day, 2.1 and 2.2. What you want to do is get on Connect Math and watch the videos for those sections. Take notes while you're watching the videos and bring those notes to class with you. But even before the first class period, try some of the homework from both of those sections. You don't have to complete all the homework. You're going to have time to do that after we meet, but you want to attempt some of the problems so that you've got an idea of whether or not what you just watched makes sense. You can go back to that homework after we've met in class, and then you can finish it up. Now, if you do all of those things before the first class period, that's also going to earn you those 4 extra credit points, and every point counts in this class. So make sure you do that before we meet on our first class period. So I'm really looking forward to our summer together. Make sure that you watch the videos for those 2 sections before we see each other on the first class period. Try a little bit of the homework, and when we meet on our first day, we will hit the ground running.